Hey, Mahalo Usos. Much appreciated for the click. I had no idea that the first Paladin video I made would be so popular. I didn't even know that there was a market for Templar tanks, to be honest. You know, it's not a very popular build. Anyways, today I remade a version of that Templar tank. I changed up one set and put recommended champion point passive abilities as well, you know, with the new combat update. Now, this gameplay you're watching is a video of my character doing a veteran Ruins of Mazatoon run, which is not a particularly easy dungeon. It was just a random daily dungeon of the day and it went quite smooth. And the gameplay I acquired was actually perfect because I wanted gameplay where the healer wasn't very good. And you know, the healer I had here only know how to throw in radiating regeneration and all that crap. And healing orb, you know, he didn't do much burst healing, which was perfect. So I was able to showcase the healing capabilities of this character quite well. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Let's get started. Alright, so for your class, obviously the Templar, because it's a PvE Templar tank, right? And in terms of race, I think there are three viable options. Now, the previous video you saw Imperium being one of the three options. I took that out and instead opted to give you the option of picking a Breton, right? So if you want a very tanky gameplay, I would go with Nord. If you want a more support healing gameplay, I would go with Breton. And if you want something in between, you know, with a good amount of a good amount of health and a good amount of, like, you know, healing done, then I would pick Argonian. Choice is really up to you. Now, as for your attributes, I would suggest putting more into health if you want a tank, and more into magicka if you want to be a better support healer, depending on your playstyle. Choice is really up to you. And as you can see on the right, these are the stats, you know, pretty good magicka recovery and resistances overall. Not bad. For your Mundus Stone, the Atronach, for your magicka recovery, right? And for food, any tri-stat boosting food is good, but Bewitched Sugar Skulls or Witch Mothers is good too. Now, as for your sets, you should be using Leeching Plate, right? Leeching Plate is still the same set from the previous build, version 1.0, and a set that I have not changed. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but it basically keeps you healed and alive for every enemy the poison clouds hit. Now, as for the new set that I replaced from the previous video, which was the Brands of the Imperium set, you will now be using the Prayer Shawl set, and this set, I believe, is better for a more consistent shield. It's a little smaller, but it's more consistent, right? Because it can proc every 2 seconds when you overheal. And since you always have your extended ritual up and your other heals and everything, you will be able to give your team a modest little buff every 2 seconds, which is great for sustain. And the other stats on this set are also great in terms of boosting your magicka and overall magicka recovery. Lord Warden is the set that was the same, used in the previous build, which gives your team a nice little resistance boost if they stand within the orb. And if at any point you need to see what trait and enchantments that were used for any of these gear sets, feel free to pause, rewind, so you can see my recommendations. Now here I'm just really going to quickly show you what I have slotted on my character. Now, I don't have the recommended traits that I recommended to you because I just can't afford it with the transmute crystals. However, do note that you have to have your prayer set on your rings, necklace, and sword and board. Okay? Because that set is a light armor set, you need to have it on those slots. Otherwise, you're going to be wearing light armor and you're going to find yourself being very killable. So just keep that in mind. For skills, you want Ritual of Rebirth from your Restoring Light skill line. You want Extended Ritual from your Restoring Light skill line as well. Right? This is your main AoE heal over time that you set on the floor. You want your Repentance also from your Restoring Light skill line. And you want your Restoring Focus also from your Restoring Light skill line as well. Now, you want your Pierce Armor as your main taunt, which is from the One Hand and Shield skill line. And then for your ultimate, you want Practiced Incantation from also your Restoring Light skill line. Now, in terms of passives, under your Aedric Spear, Dawn's Wrath, and Restoring Light, at the very least, you want to have Balanced Warrior maxed out on your Aedric Spear, Restoring Spirit from your Dawn's Wrath, but you want to have that full Restoring Light skill tree maxed out since you are a support healer and you'll be using a lot of those spells. Now, for your other passives, very self-explanatory, your one hand and shield, so you got to max that. You only wear heavy armor, so you got to max that as well. You always want to try your best to max Undaunted because it gives you, a modest little resource boost. And then you always want to max out your race. Now, as for the champion points, I posted 4 recommended slottables for every single tree. I don't want to go into too much detail explaining what each one does. I would suggest going online, reading a guide to see what's best for you. These are just recommendations. If you find a slottable that you prefer more on this build, go right ahead. I don't think it's going to make or break the build. At the very least, you want to give it enough tankiness so your character can survive. Now, in terms of your combinations, you want to aggro enemies with your Pierce Armor first, always stabbing the strongest enemies first, spinning them around, and stabbing enemies that are attacking your team. And your second step right after you aggro enemies should be casting Restoring Focus and Extended Ritual. Pick a spot that you think you're going to be in for most of the fight, and recast it if you need to reposition. Now, you should be casting Repentance, every time you see bodies drop and you see dead enemies with a little glowing little prompt for you, which this is a really good free burst heal for your team, as well as restoring the stamina of your team as well. And it also has a passive ability that increases your health, magicka, and stamina recovery by about 20%. Now, Ritual of Rebirth is your powerful but costly AoE burst heal, and always cast this if you feel like your healer is being overwhelmed and cannot keep up with their heals or sustain. And finally, you have your oh shit button, the last resort, which is practiced incantation. And you use this when the team is being overwhelmed, and as well as yourself, and you need a quick burst of very strong AoE healing for several seconds. Yeah, and that's basically it. So here I'm going to show you some gameplay. So here I'm in the last boss in the Ruins of Mazatun. And the healer was really bad in this lobby, or in this dungeon that I queued up with. It was my random of the day. So it's exactly what I wanted, because it's perfect for me to kind of showcase how effective I was at healing my teammates, right? A lot of them were complaining about, a lot of them were dying a lot because the healer here was just using heal over times like the radiating regeneration and the orbs, and not bursting enough, especially when they started hitting heavy. So I kind of provided that burstiness later on in the dungeon, or just during the dungeon in general. So yeah, here you can see I'm constantly healing and using my specials. So yeah, this was a good dungeon. And this is, right here is the Mighty Chidan, which is one of the earlier bosses in the Ruins of Mazatun. And I actually joined in midway because I guess their tank left. I don't know what was going on. Maybe the healer wasn't healing the tank enough or something, but I joined midway. And here, as you can see, I'm providing some support heals with the Ritual of Rebirth. It's really expensive, so be very wary when you cast it, okay? Because you probably get around to 4 casts before you run completely out of magicka. Here is footage of me in the Unhallowed Grave Veteran Dungeon. And this lobby, a lot of them didn't know what to do in the dungeon, but they actually learned quite quick. But here, as you can see, I'm actually providing some pretty good burst heals during some of the mechanics where the bosses hit heavy there. And here is Vaults of Madness, also on Veteran. And as you can see on the top left, the healer's not even here. So I've basically become the healer. And they did die a few times, but I don't want to, take full blame, because a lot of them stood in one-hit mechanics and, damage things on the ground. So other than that, I kept them alive for the most part with my auras and my burst heal. And yeah, that's basically it. Here I'm just going to show you the survivability of this character. I was just joining some of these Harrow Storms and stabbed the boss, just going right in front of its face, and then, providing a heal to people nearby every now and then. But I really just wanted to test the survivability. So it was, this character wouldn't die. It was hard to kill, especially in the Harrow Storm. I brought it to other bosses as well, but, for the sake of just not having enough time, I'm only going to show one more clip at the end, and that's the Griffin boss, and that's coming up in a few seconds. So right here, I'm at the Griffins. all I do is cast my focus on the ground and then, you know, extended ritual, and just stand right in the middle right here. And yeah, couldn't be killed. Took some pretty hard hits, but really difficult to kill. Well, thank you, thank you for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. Hope you stick around soon. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. All right, take it easy. Stay safe.